Just taking over. So.
Awesome. So our next presentation is going to be our final update for our All Hazard Mitigation Plan, our 2025, our 5-year update, last done in 2020. I know some of you guys have heard this spiel before, but obviously one of the key aspects of the All Hazard Mitigation Plan update is to provide as much public awareness as possible to make sure that we're bringing everybody along for the ride, informing them of this plan process and making sure that everyone's aware of where we are in the process. So for those of you who remember, we started the kickoff meeting back in November of 2024. That's when we formalized our planning team. And since then, we've gone through a lot of different aspects of this All Hazard Mitigation Plan update. We worked on, with our planning team, establishing the strategy, figuring out the goals and objectives of the overall plan. We moved into the risk assessment where we disseminated a public survey. We received almost 200 responses from that. We also worked with our jurisdictional partners with 2 separate meetings where we worked on them creating their risk assessment and then also their mitigation strategies that accompanied the risk assessment. We then had several public meetings, about 3 of which occurred during LEPCs, but Sarah was also out there during public events at Athol Days and at New Leaf Nursery and other locations throughout the county, informing the public of what mitigation is, why we do it, and how it's beneficial to the county and its overall preparedness. So where we find ourselves now, you see a little bumpy guy up there, we are at the comment period. So we last week or the week before, we posted volume 2 out for public comment. Volume 2 is the compilation of every jurisdictional annex. We had about 33 different jurisdictions participate in the plan update. Volume 2 is that compilation of all of their annexes with their risk assessments and their accompanying mitigation strategies. That is in comment period right now, and literally yesterday, Sarah and I wrapped up volume 1 of the mitigation plan, so that'll be getting posted for public comment either the end of this week or next week. Volume 1 encompasses, and Sarah will talk about this a little bit too, but that is the bulk of our hazard annexes where we go into depth about what the risks are in Kootenai County, what those hazard profiles look like, and it has an overall arching risk assessment that was done through that public participation. So we're almost at a year in November of doing this plan. Those of you who know have heard us say that this is our first time undertaking this task without the help of a contractor. So we're really proud of the effort that we've put in with it, and we're really proud of the product that we've developed because of it. We think through this process, we have a better understanding of the plan, and we're able to utilize that plan more intentionally throughout different ways in the county. And that brings us to our beautiful little planning portfolio that we have developed through this process. Those of you who may remember, in 2024, we also did the update of the county's emergency operations plan internally without a contractor. We then developed the Kootenai County Continuity of Operation Plan, the COOP plan, internally without a contractor. And then this year we did the All Hazard Mitigation Plan internally without a contractor. So we might be insane, but we really do feel like this has given us a better holistic understanding of the plans that we have in Kootenai County, how they work together to support different aspects of emergency management, and how we can truly identify capability gaps within the county and make things actionable to address those gaps and train and exercise and get the things that we need to be more efficient and effective in our response here in Kootenai County. So as you can see, our planning portfolio encompasses the IPP, which is the Integrated Preparedness Plan. Annually, we conduct a workshop where we go over with our partners and we discuss what training and exercises they have and how we can put that into a 5-year plan for the county. The All Hazard Mitigation Plan, the plan we're working on right now, that touches mitigation. What are our known risks? How do we identify mitigation projects or solutions to those risks to improve our overall recovery, preparedness, and response during incidents? Our COOP plan is really focused on response itself. It makes sure that we have continuity of operations if there is ever an event that could impact government operations in Kootenai County. And then, of course, our emergency operations plan is the response plan for Kootenai County. How do all of our partners come together to the table to respond to the known threats we have, such as wildfire, floods in Kootenai County? Those all work in conjunction with agency level SOPs or standard operating procedures. So it's that holistic overarching ecosystem that really helps us to understand what our risks are, how we mitigate them, how we respond to them, and how we prepare for them. So that is Kootenai County's planning portfolio. What does this planning portfolio look like in action, you might ask? Well, first we have a problem. So for example, in a hazmat incident, we know that we have hazmat transported on highways or rail systems, and they are a risk to some schools in our area, such as the Rathdrum area, or our water supply systems. So we work in plan development and we identify a hazmat annex. There is a hazmat annex in both our hazard mitigation plan and our emergency operations plan. We determine what we could need for that hazmat annex, and we incorporate that into the response or our emergency operations plan. We then work at plan implementation, so we share that plan with our first responders. We make sure that we have the necessary items or equipment to make sure that that plan is actionable. And we work on making sure that we all have the right messaging or the right partnerships established to address that problem that we discussed. In order to further our ability to have a more efficient and effective response, we identify training and exercise. What can we do? What tabletop exercises or full-scale exercises can we do with partners to help us drill near a school that might be impacted by a hazmat incident next to a railway or a highway? So we work on integrating that into our integrated preparedness plan that we developed during that integrated preparedness planning workshop. Next, we evaluate and we improve. Through the testing or the training and exercise, we might identify some more gaps that exist, such as the school is delayed in notifying and it is unclear who has the authority to close roads. So we have that conversation in that training and exercise. We identify those problems, and then we go back to our plans and we look to mitigate those impacts or improve our response plans. So that evaluation and improvement can occur in the All Hazard Mitigation Plan or the EOP. And then lastly, we revise those plans, we update our resource lists, and we retest in other exercises. And this may result in other agencies updating their internal standard operating procedures. So it truly is a continual process that we are constantly trying to refine and craft in order to make sure that the plans we have in Kootenai County speak to the needs of our first responder communities, identify the gaps that we have, and works to close those gaps so we overall can increase the overall effectiveness and efficiency of response. And with that, Sarah is going to give you guys a bigger dive into what volume 1 of the Kootenai County All Hazard Mitigation Plan looks like.
I like the podium something. Okay, so I know we kind of briefly reviewed this in previous meetings about what potentially the plan layout might look at, but we're just going to take a deep dive into the final layout of both volume 1 and volume 2. So volume 1 is comprised of table of contents, the base plan, which is an executive summary. That's just kind of a brief overview of the plan and how to use it. The planning process, so everything that has that entails how we got from point A to point B in the plan, and all of the backup documentation with it. The methodology for the risk assessment, so how we got all the data and why. We have the Kootenai County hazard profile. We're going to go into hazard profiles in a second, but it kind of just goes over the background of the demographics of Kootenai County, the risks and threats that potentially could affect our county. We go into hazard annexes, and so they're broken up into natural hazard annexes, technological, and human cause, and each of those have a full hazard profile with hazards of interest only having a partial hazard profile. And then we go into alternative mitigation strategies and plan adoption and plan maintenance. So kind of back to those hazard annexes, like I said, we have natural hazard profile annexes, which are flood, landslide, severe weather, and wildfire, which is the community wildfire protection plan. It's kind of a standalone plan, but also an annex. It's very multi-use. We have technological hazard profile annexes, which are cybersecurity, hazmat transportation, and infrastructure and utility failure. And then we finalize it with human caused hazard profile annexes, which are acts of violence that breaks out into active shooter, active threat, civil unrest, and terrorism. And then we have infectious disease. So each of those hazard profile annexes have a full hazard profile to accompany them. We then have a section for hazards of interest. So avalanche, drought, earthquake, levee dam failure, and radiological nuclear events. Based off of communication with the planning team, we all decided that these were the hazards that didn't necessarily impact Kootenai County enough to be able to have enough data to support a full annex. And so it just kind of has a mention of like some background, impacts, probability, while the previous annexes have a full hazard impact summary and background and more data to accompany it. We then get into volume 2, which is primarily more of mitigation strategies and jurisdictional annexes. So all the information that specifically ties to particular jurisdictions. Again, we have the base plan that accompanies volume 2. It kind of just gives background into the methodology and kind of just more information on how we got the information and how to use it. The jurisdictional annexes are going to comprise of mitigation strategies, an individual risk assessment for each jurisdiction. It's kind of broken out into municipalities and special districts. And then the special districts are comprised of fire districts and EMS, school districts, highway districts, and then other special districts, Panhandle Health and Kootenai Health. Good job, guys. Kind of talking about hazard profiles, like I mentioned, Kootenai County has their own hazard profile, as well as all of the hazard annex profiles. So what that kind of looks like is we take a look at the locations that are most vulnerable, so the geographic areas affected, how often a certain hazard has occurred, what impacts it might have to people, property, the economy, and the environment, the warning time for certain hazards, and then the secondary and tertiary hazards from that initial impact. In all of the hazard profiles, we have a hazard impact summary that has the secondary and tertiary hazards or what could possibly happen off of that specific event. So for example, from wildfire, you could have flooding as a possible secondary event later down because of the burn scars. So we just thought that'd be really interesting to accompany into these profiles. To kind of go hand in hand with that, we also have the risk factors. These are all of the factors that primarily make up the risk assessment. So the perceived risk, the community and stakeholder concern, again, historical occurrence, how many times has this happened, the probability of occurrence, as well as property and population exposed. And then to kind of just boil this down to the basic bones, hazard profiles are the story behind the hazard. The risk factors give numbers to the story. So it's a lot more measurable that way. So story and then data. We kind of go in for a mitigation strategy as well. This is just the methodology behind how we got there. So the first step of a mitigation strategy is to identify priority hazards. So the greatest potential impacts that a certain hazard might have. We set goals and objectives. And so we want to have the clear outcomes from whatever that mitigation initiative might present. Develop those mitigation actions and then evaluate and prioritize them based off of funding, impact, feasibility, and then monitor that progress once that mitigation strategy has been implemented. So just to kind of give you an example of how that process looks, we'll take the Kootenai County risk assessment, for example. We'll look at the hazards. Extreme temperatures kind of ranks a little bit high on the scale, and extreme temperatures is it's really hot or it's really cold to the point where it affects people in a very negative way. So extreme temperatures, we'll take a look at some of our mitigation initiatives, but one way to kind of combat that would be to lessen the exposure to extreme temperatures. A way to do that is to get local warming and cooling shelters. So we decided that a good mitigation initiative would be to create a database with the identified cooling and warming shelters. So that way we can distribute it in a moment's notice if need be. So we come up with our goals and objectives. We want to lessen the impact to extreme temperatures to the community. And then we go ahead and create that initiative. We tie it into the specific hazard. We attribute it to the objectives that were predetermined in our base plan in coordination with our planning team. Who is the lead agency to keep that ball rolling for this mitigation project, which would be KCOM, Kootenai County Emergency Management. We go into how much the projected cost would be, as well as who would be paying for it, and then the timeline. And so per FEMA requirements, we also have to have a strategy on prioritizing each mitigation item. So for this mitigation, it's about a medium priority. The priority determining factors, as well as the cost benefit ratios, all of that methodology is explained in the base plan. So it doesn't just look like we're throwing random words out there and hoping for the best. We tie how many objectives were met, again, with the cost benefit ratio as well. And so all of this is in a chart on every mitigation strategy in every jurisdictional annex. So kind of something we thought was really interesting to take a look at in comparison to the 2020 plan and 2025 plan. So in 2020, we had 298 total mitigation initiatives, which were ranked, 117 of them were ranked as being high priority. 142 were being ranked as medium priority, and 39 were ranked as low priority. In 2025, we have 383 total mitigation initiatives, 162 being high priority, 183 being medium, and 38 being low. So it's approximately 85 more mitigation initiatives this time around. Kind of going over some plan maintenance. So this is a living document, just as all of our plans are. So we'll be regularly monitoring to see if there's any changes in risk condition or mitigation initiatives that need immediate updating, or if there's any grant funding available. So we'll continuously monitor this as need be. We will be doing an annual review as well. That's where we reach out to all jurisdictions to kind of get a status update on mitigation initiatives, and we take a look at our own as well. Tiffany and I were talking, and we're going to actually start implementing that annual review as part of LEPC to kind of review the feedback we received for those mitigation initiatives, or just do status updates and kind of review that as well. And then with the 5-year update, it is required by FEMA and state guidelines, and that's what we're currently in the process of right now. So it is our responsibility to initiate this update at least 12 months ahead of the expiration of the plan. And like Tiffany said, we are doing this in-house now, so that makes it even more fun. But our goal with this, kind of like Tiffany was saying, with the planning portfolio, is our purpose is to have this be able to integrate with other plans, whether they're just comprehensive plans, SOPs, our emergency operations plans, planning and zoning guidelines as well. We want these to all be complementary to each other. And so speaking of that, we have the Community Wildfire Protection Plan that we've completely revamped as well as a part of this All Hazard Mitigation Plan update. And then Tiffany's going to kind of review that. Like, it's really cool.
Yeah, so one of the aspects we haven't really touched on yet is the Community Wildfire Protection Plan with you guys. And so just so you understand, as Sarah alluded to, the CWPP is integrated into the All Hazard Mitigation Plan. The CWPP is a requirement, and IDL is the body who approves the CWPP for Kootenai County. Not to toot our own horn, but I'm going to. Tyre, of those of you who know Tyre Holfelds with IDL, he is the one in charge of reviewing the CWPPs. He can be a little bit of a tough cookie. However, he reviewed our CWPP and said that it exceeds FEMA requirements and is a wonderful example of what a comprehensive CWPP should look like for Kootenai County. So, well, for the state of Idaho. So what we did in that process is we have really worked on being thoughtful about the programs we administer. The CWPP is kind of the foundation for which we build our Fire Smart program off of. Obviously, you guys know Andrea. She helps with the coordination of the Fire Smart program. But one of the things the CWPP is, it explains the risk to wildfire in Kootenai County. As you can see, this map right here is a map of Kootenai County. This red boundary, which one is the little thingy? Of course. Oh, okay. This red boundary right here that kind of goes all the way around Kootenai County is the WUI, the Wildland Urban Interface. The layer on top of that is housing density. So you can obviously see that all of Kootenai County is pretty much encompassed in the WUI. And there is a lot of housing density that also interfaces with that wildland urban interface, which is why it's called an interface, right? So we have a high risk exposure to wildfire in Kootenai County. The CWPP works to identify that risk exposure, but also identify what projects jurisdictions can do. So our fire jurisdictions, specifically, that's who we work with on the CWPP to implement the mitigation strategies for. And then we look at also what programs we have through the Fire Smart program that we can help start getting some of this work done to make sure that we're aligning local priorities with those state and federal funding opportunities. Again, the CWPP is a living document. And so while it does get updated every 5 years, annually, Andrea and I meet with our fire chiefs and we discuss what projects, problems, or opportunities they have in relation to fuels reduction work or things we can do to inform the public on Ready, Set, Go guidelines or anything like that. So the CWPP is meant to be actionable, and that's what we've done in this update. We have made it to where it is a plan that truly identifies what the needs are on the ground. And so as funding opportunities make themselves known, we are able to capitalize on those projects that are listed in the plan. So again, when I'm talking about Kootenai County's wildfire risk, obviously that map showed you some of the WUI with the population density, but these are all different factors that IDL helped us to identify as far as wildfire risk in Kootenai County. So that top one right there is the WUI. Right there, this is the WUI in Kootenai County. This is fire probability. This is the fire hazard. So I guess what you're seeing in all of these maps is red, and red means there's a high exposure, high probability. If you look to see where Kootenai County compares nationally, so this little dot right here, that's Kootenai County. So wildfire likelihood and wildfire occurrence. We are both in the higher little quadrant up there for both occurrence and probability. The reason we're not higher is because it goes up with population exposure. So as our population continues to grow, our wildfire likelihood and occurrence is going to become more and more. Like you see that big red dot right there? That's LA County, for example. So we have a high likelihood, a high consequence, and as our population continues to grow, specifically in that WUI, we are going to see our little likelihood and our exposure to continue to increase up that map. So again, I mentioned our Fire Smart program. So what the CWPP, it breaks it down by fire jurisdiction. So like Coeur d'Alene Fire is going to have specific mitigation actions. Kootenai County Fire and Rescue is going to have specific mitigation actions listed. Northern Lakes, every fire jurisdiction is going to have identified mitigation action items specific to their jurisdiction. But this plan also then takes some of those projects and compiles them into larger project opportunities for our Kootenai County Fire Smart program. So some of these listed, and I think all but 2 of these are funded right now, which is really cool. They list projects that we can fund or should fund, meaningful opportunities for hazardous fuels reduction, and it aligns to current or potential funding opportunities through the Hazardous Fuels Reduction Grant, the Western States Management Grant, or even the Landowners Assistance Grant, which we just got our first award for at the tune of $500,000, one of the biggest grants we've been awarded. So that is really exciting. So moving forward, when we're talking about all of this stuff and putting it into action, as I said, the plan identifies projects, we then look at funding opportunities, and then we put that money on the ground in a meaningful way. Every single one of these projects that you see listed, Canfield Mountain has had work started on it. Tubbs Hill is almost completed. Northern Timber has been funded in an MOU and work will begin later this summer or next summer. Landowners Assistance Grant, which is the one we just got awarded for $500,000. That will be taking place in the Wolf Lodge, Cataldo, and Harrison communities. That work will be beginning hopefully next year after the finalization of that MOU. And then in partnership with the Shared Stewardship Program, which Kootenai County is a member of, we are going to have the opportunity to receive some pass-through funding to do large-scale treatment along the 95 corridor. So these are all ways that the CWPP takes that information and then makes it actionable. So it's not a plan that just sits on the shelf. It's a plan that identifies, prioritizes, and allows us to align funding opportunities to get that money on the ground and make meaningful differences in our community to reduce risk, which is the overall thing we are trying to achieve with the Kootenai County All Hazard Mitigation Plan. So that's kind of cool. So where we are heading, Sarah kind of alluded to this a little bit as well, but as we work to strengthen that overall Kootenai County preparedness portfolio and planning portfolio, we're taking these plans and we're linking them things that we can measure the success of them. So we'll be doing annual reviews, identifying what mitigation action items were completed, which ones have had progress on it, providing a report to you guys, linking them with dollars through grant programs that we are made aware of, or maybe finding opportunities to achieve some of these through the State Homeland Security grant program that our office administers as well. We will be doing that capability assessment and having those meetings to determine what training and exercise needs we have through that IPTW and IPP process. And we will do this all again in 5 years, a complete overhaul of the plan. But because we're going to be intentional with those annual review process, that 5-year review and update will be a lot more expedited and a lot more meaningful in the outcomes we get in these plans. So We're kind of tying all of the pieces together and building a program that we think is going to be beneficial, not just to Kootenai County, but to our partners as well. And with that, I'll let Sarah say where we're going.
I'll just wrap this up fairly quickly. So we're at the end stages. We're at the comment period for volume 2 right now. It is currently on our website. Comment period will end August 31st. So there's a form on there. We'll be putting volume 1 up there probably within the next week for comment period. While that's going to be open for feedback, we're probably going to be meeting with our planning team one final time for review of the overall plan as a whole. Once that is concluded and comment period has ended, we will bring it to the Idaho Office of Emergency Management, as well as FEMA Region 10 for pre-review. Once we get that go ahead from FEMA Region 10, so approval pending adoption, we can take it to our jurisdictional partners to formalize the adoption of the plan on their end. One of the things we were really concerned about with doing this whole process is we were worried that getting the feedback and getting all the information from all of our jurisdictional partners was going to be a nightmare, considering there's 33 that we'll have to go through specifically. And I just wanted to give a special thanks to all of our jurisdictions because they did do a really good job at providing information when asked. We had a few stragglers here and there, but overall, everybody was really attentive and in tune with the process. So just thank you to everybody for being a part of this daunting process that we've taken on ourselves. Like I said, volume 2 is open for comment period. If you'd like to scan the QR code and take a look at it, there is a form you can submit on our webpage just to give any commentary that you'd like. But again, thank you for everybody for being a part of this and kind of dealing with all of our presentations and repetitive redundancies of the plan reviews. It's been really fun, and we're really proud of how this plan has turned out. And so, like I said, we'll be getting volume 1 out on our website probably within the next week or so. We'll be pushing it to all of our partners via email as well, and just trying to keep this whole update process as transparent as possible. So we really do welcome any feedback and any commentary on this plan. Did you have any last minute?
No, just with that, does anyone have any questions for us before we close out our final review with you all on where we've been and where we're going with the All Hazard Mitigation Plan? Questions, concerns, comments, thoughts?
Is the 5 years, is it a requirement from FEMA?
Yes.
Yeah.
For grant funding and all that fun stuff.
I just like to say, I think you've done a really good job. And I'd like to commend you on your process and going through it and inclusion of everybody.
Thank you. We've tried to be extremely transparent because we want to make sure everyone has all of the information, can make informed decisions as well. So we appreciate it.
I don't know if I got it. Could you just repeat all that again real quick?
No. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you
Thank you
guys.
guys for being part of this with us.